Okay, welcome back, everybody. It's now my pleasure to introduce George Olenek. He's going to talk to us about microplastics, and if there's one way we can reduce uh, fossil fuel extraction from the ground is to use less plastic, and that George's going to talk to us about that. There you go, George. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jerry. I want to thank the Mississauga Climate Action Group for allowing me to come on this platform and highlight this problem of plastics in our water. And I invite you to watch the short film that'll be linked to elsewhere on this site. And the basic takeaway from the film is that plastics are getting into our water and they're breaking down. And basically, it's catastrophic for a lot of wildlife and fish in the seas and in the lakes and rivers that surround us. So I just wanted to highlight this problem and offer maybe a few actions, different things people can do to try and mitigate this calamity really that's assaulting our world. And as I'd like to reiterate, as we've been talking about on this site, water is life, and it's basic, so basic to all life that we really need to protect it and prevent it from getting contaminated. Having said that, maybe we could start the slideshow right now. Plastics, it's in our bodies, it's in our water, it's everywhere. Basically, it's in the air. It's being carried by air currents, even as far away as the Arctic and Antarctica. This is a bit of a shocking picture. This fellow, Chris Jordan, took this on an island in the middle of the Pacific. I think the closest place to Midway Island, very famous place in the Second World War, is I think about 2,000 kilometers, 2,500 kilometers away. So I thought we should start out by looking at some of the consequences that plastic can have in this world. Now, all of these plastics, they break down into what we call microplastics, which are less than pieces of plastic, which are less than 5 millimeters in diameter. Next slide, please. And again, I just wanted to focus this short presentation on taking action, maybe offering a few suggestions what we can do as individuals and as a group to maybe tackle this problem. Next slide. Now this is the fellow who took the picture. He made an awesome film, and maybe perhaps afterwards we can send this PowerPoint presentation out to everyone, because if you click on this picture here, you'll be taken to Chris's film. He went to Midway Island, and he actually photographed birds, some of them unfortunately under extreme distress. But just to highlight that this problem is a worldwide problem and it's going everywhere, and we really, really need something to do about it. We need to do something about it. And one thing I just wanted to talk about is just all of these environmental movements in general. It is easy to get, I guess, discouraged and think, what can we do, and can one person really make a difference? And I guess I'll just read from the top there that every revolution starts with individuals making a personal decision to act. And this is something I heard from Chris from this morning. He said in his film, he says, do we have the courage to face the realities of our time and allow ourselves to feel deeply enough that it transforms us and our future? So this is really tough, because people, not only can they get depressed about the whole situation, but they think, well, what can one person do? And just get cynical too. I was reading some of the comments below that picture, and some people were actually questioning whether that photo was real. So I invite you to go online and look at some scientists and look at the film, and you'll see they'll actually cut open some of these birds, and they find incredible amounts of plastic. And as I mentioned in the film, that a lot of these plastics, they look big, but they break down over time, and they're made of basically deadly carcinogens. So it is something that we really have to tackle and really stop plastic from getting into the water at the source. And in the film, some filters are looked at that can maybe be put on different, our washing machines. Next slide, please. So these are some of the actions that I threw together. I call it a biosphere bucket list. And the first one, sign up for or organize a shoreline cleanup. Birds and other life forms will benefit. I just want to mention that even today I was at the Heart Lake Conservation Area in Brampton here, and I actually met, this first time in 20 years I've ever seen, I'm sure lots of people do it, but two people were actually walking around with bags and picking up garbage. You know, a small input, but it really has a big impact. Also, this is one that I'm looking for some maybe volunteers to go to a supermarket and deliver a letter to a manager and have it sent to head office. I think one of the obstacles we have is people think that we don't live beside an ocean. Well, the ocean is as close as your nearest creek. There's places around the world where they have banned plastic bags on different islands, like Hawaii, I think banned it, but they really have to be banned everywhere. So this is something where I think if more than one person shows up, there might be a better effect. Go for a walk in a local park. I went for a walk yesterday across a school ground, and 100 meters, I picked up 15 straws. So this is something that we can do. Next slide. And this is something that I think is probably one of the biggest things that we have to deal with, since we all grew up in this society where we're told almost constantly every day that we really need to have eternal growth, and we should have a panic attack if the economy hasn't grown by 3% or 4%. This is something I think we really have to address, that maybe it isn't such a good idea that we're constantly growing and growing. And as has been mentioned before, in different circles around this COVID problem we have right now, the Earth is actually taking a rest. The skies are clearing up, but once we get back into our regular mode, I think we really have to question the way we've been behaving. Anyway, next one, meeting with government representatives. I think we really have to meet with them, but we also have to meet with them in groups. We have to put on pressure. I've written letters to the Prime Minister. I've written letters to my MP. I've met with my MP. Not much has happened. I think it's hard for them too sometimes. I mean, can't be too cynical, but really I think we have to organize. Next point. This is a hard one because again, we've grown up in a culture where it's all about fashion, about wearing a different set of clothes every day. Maybe we should take a page out of Steve Jobs' book and just wear the same thing for a couple of weeks. Of course, maybe you should wash it once in a while, but that's another issue. Next slide, please. This is also important, reduce and reuse. It may be rehashing some of what I've said, but this is something we all have to learn about and really try to do. The next one, learn to meditate, learn about forest bathing, nurture a sense of wonder to fuel your courage so you can continue to take action, value the wonder, and we will find a way to move mountains together. I think this is important because again, as I said before, it's easy to become discouraged and think that we can't make anything happen. But if we value something as much as we should, and think about the future generations that are not even here, then maybe we'll have some fuel to get in this battle. This is an interesting thing I just learned about on the weekend: the restorative joy of mending clothes. Now, I'm not going to say that I've been mending my clothes, but maybe I should start learning. But I'll try and provide a link for this later. This was on CBC on the weekend. And maybe avoid synthetics as much as possible. In the film, I highlight how these the clothing we buy made out of acrylics and all sorts of other plastics. Really, these are made of deadly chemicals that break apart. And as was mentioned by another presenter, these chemicals are in us. And one study coming out of Australia estimated last summer, or I think it was 2 summers ago, that each and every one of us is taking in the equivalent of a credit card per week. So that's something to think about. Next slide, please. Just some little things. Wash your clothes with cold water. Less microfibers will be released. Also, wash more full loads of laundry. There's less friction on the clothing, so less microfibers are set free. And as much as possible, maybe air dry clothing. Less energy used equals less carbon footprint, also is less stress on our world ocean. Next slide. And use front load washers. These use less water. And again, to reiterate, the fewer items of clothing, buy fewer items of clothing that are made of polyester, acrylics, and nylon. All are made of plastics. And with this issue, I think this is one. And talking about filters in the film, again, I talk about filters that can be put on washing machines. But this is something where we really have to look at regulations that make this mandatory, because a few people putting on filters on their washing machines is really not going to do a lot. And I hope on the site too that we can put the article I wrote about microplastics. In there you'll find a link, and I don't know why, but it always has to be California first, but they're trying to pass a law there to make these filters mandatory, and that's really where we have to go. And also I'd like to end with, again, it's easy to become cynical and discouraged, but you really need to fuel yourself up by reading even children's stories. And I'm sure most of you are familiar with Dr. Seuss, and he's written many books. Two of my favorites are Horton Hears a Who and The Lorax. And in The Lorax, there's one brief scene where there is a complaints box on a tree. And I think the Lorax does write a complaint and he puts it in there. But I compare that to writing, there is a place for letters, writing letters and trying to get in touch with politicians. But in the end, every great movement in history, I mean, Martin Luther King, even he said himself, he was just one man. What really pushed it over the top for him and many, many of their struggles was the fact that he had literally thousands of people around him helping, push the cause forward. So I think that's what we really need. And when you read some of these stories about Martin Luther King, and yes, even a children's story, it gets you energized, and you can, better able to just take up the fight. I want to thank you for listening, and that's about it for now. And also, sorry, that last page, the sun has come out. And I want people to really also to give them fuel to imagine a restored biosphere, and then go make it happen, and just make your own individual commitment, your own individual action, and something, amazing will come from it. Yeah, life on Earth is counting on us. And I think it's a little ironic that I wrote that life on Earth is counting on us, but really it's the other way around. I think a famous scientist, I can't remember his name, but he said that if all the insects died tomorrow, humankind would probably last about 50 years. But if all the humans left tomorrow, the earth would flourish. And I think there's something, to be found in that wisdom. But anyway, thanks so much.